You know that feeling when you open your banking app and instead of that familiar stomach drop, you actually pause. You look at the number, you look again, and for the first time in your life, you don't immediately close the app in a cold sweat. There's a specific number where that shift happens, and it's not $1 million. It's not even six figures. Most financial influencers online will draw a big red circle around $100,000 and call it the Holy Grail. Some will tell you that you need a paid-off house, a fat 401k, and a passive income stream before you can breathe easy. But here's the thing, they're all missing. There's a much earlier milestone that completely rewires how you think, how you work, and how you move through the world. And once you cross it, the rules of the game change permanently. That number is $50,000. My name is Cash, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, financial psychology, and why some people seem to build wealth almost effortlessly, while others grind for decades and stay stuck in the exact same spot. If you're someone who wants to understand the real mechanics behind wealth building, not the highlight reel, not the lucky inheritance story, but the actual psychology and math behind it, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if it ends up shifting how you see money. Now, before we get into why $50,000 is the real game changer, let me ask you something. When you picture someone who's good with money, what do you actually see? Maybe you imagine some tech bro in his 20s who got lucky on crypto. Maybe you picture a frugal retiree who never bought a new car in his life. The truth is, wealth building doesn't work the way most people picture it. It's not linear, it's not glamorous, and it sure doesn't happen by accident. Here's what actually happens. There are invisible financial thresholds, specific dollar amounts where the psychology of money shifts completely. Cross them, and everything changes. Miss them, and you stay stuck wondering why saving feels pointless, and investing feels like gambling. $50,000 is the threshold that separates people who are building real lasting wealth from people who are permanently stuck in financial survival mode. And the crazy part is, most people have no idea this number even matters. Think about it this way. Imagine you're trying to push a massive boulder up a steep hill. Every inch is a fight. You're straining, your legs are burning, you're making almost no visible progress. For a long time it feels completely hopeless. But here's what nobody tells you. Once you build enough momentum and that boulder finally crests the top of the hill, something remarkable happens. Gravity stops being your enemy. It becomes your ally. The boulder rolls faster and faster on its own, and you're barely pushing anymore. $50,000 is the point where your financial boulder crests that hill. Everything before this number feels like you're fighting uphill against gravity. Every dollar saved feels like a drop in the ocean. Every market dip feels like a personal attack. Every unexpected expense feels like the universe is personally out to get you. Everything after this number, gravity starts working in your favor. But here's where it gets really interesting, and this is the part most finance videos completely skip over. The difference isn't just mathematical. It's not simply that you have more money to invest, or that your returns are bigger in absolute terms. The real shift happens in how your brain operates. When you don't have meaningful savings, your brain runs in what we call survival mode. Every financial decision gets filtered through fear and scarcity. You take the first job offer that comes along because you can't afford to negotiate. You stay in a situation you hate because leaving feels too risky. You say yes to extra shifts you don't want because you need the check. This isn't weakness. This isn't a lack of discipline. When your brain is in survival mode, it literally cannot think about growth and opportunity at the same time. It's like trying to plan a road trip while your car is on fire. Your mental bandwidth is completely consumed by putting out the immediate flames. Now here's something important, and this is a distinction most finance channels never bother to make. We're talking about $50,000 saved and invested, not $50,000 sitting in a checking account, not $50,000 in credit card rewards. There's a $50,000 in a savings account is security. $50,000 invested in a diversified portfolio is the engine that actually starts pulling you forward. Both matter, but only one of them compounds. Sound familiar? The survival mode trap? Research shows that even a small emergency fund, just $2,000, increases financial well-being by over 20%. That's less than most people spend furnishing a living room. But that tiny buffer moves your brain out of pure panic mode. When you push that emergency fund to 3 to 6 months of living expenses, which for most Americans lands somewhere between $15,000, you get another meaningful boost in financial well-being. But you're still not at the threshold. You're better. You're safer. But the real shift? That happens at 50. Here's the math. And stick with me, because this is where it gets genuinely exciting. Let's say you're saving and investing $1,000 every month, earning an average 8% annual return. Getting to your first $50,000 takes roughly 43 months of consistent discipline. That's almost 3.5 years of saying no to things you wanted. of watching your friends buy new cars while you're driving your 2014 Civic with the cracked bumper, of ignoring every voice in your head saying this isn't working. 3.5 years. That's the hard part. That's the uphill battle. But here's the kicker. Your second $50,000 doesn't take another 43 months. It takes around 32 months. Why? Because now you've got that first $50,000 working alongside your contributions, generating its own returns, doing its own heavy lifting while you sleep. Think about that for a second. You did the exact same work. You saved the same $1,000 a month. You took the same level of risk, but you shaved over a year off the timeline just because your existing money was compounding. And by the time you're building your third $50,000, the timeline shrinks even further. Your money is doing an increasing share of the work while your effort stays the same. Here's where it becomes almost comical. Once you hit $400,000 in your investment portfolio, you can generate your next $50,000 in under 8 months, passively. The same amount that took you nearly 4 years to grind out initially is now happening in the background while you're living your life. That's not luck. That's not a secret hedge fund. That's just basic mathematics finally working in your favor at scale. And here's what most people completely miss about this moment, and it might be the most important point in this entire video. When you cross $50,000, you haven't just accumulated money, you've fundamentally changed who you are. Think about what it actually requires to save and invest $50,000 from scratch. Unless you're pulling in serious income or living completely rent-free, this requires real sacrifice. You tracked your spending. You said no to things that mattered to you. You resisted the pull of lifestyle inflation every time you got a raise. You did this consistently, not for a week, not for a month, but for years. And here's the thing, most people don't realize about that journey. You proved to yourself that you can control your money, instead of letting your money control you. You became the kind of person who delays gratification when it actually matters. That's not just a financial skill. That's a character trait that bleeds into every other area of your life. Before $50,000, buying something impulsive could send you spiraling for days. After $50,000, you've got your priorities so locked in that small decisions stop feeling like moral dilemmas. But there's another psychological shift that happens at this level that almost nobody talks about. You start seeing opportunities instead of threats. When you're living paycheck to paycheck, every unexpected expense is a catastrophe. Your transmission goes out, your rent spikes, your dog needs emergency surgery. These events don't just hurt your wallet, they derail your entire mental state for weeks. But when you have $50,000 working for you, those same events become inconveniences. Annoying? Sure. Life-altering? Not even close. And now we arrive at the punchline. You start noticing opportunities that were always there, you just couldn't reach them before. Your coworker mentions a small real estate deal that needs a $20,000 partner. Before, you would have scrolled past it. Now you can actually run the numbers. A layoff happens at your company, and your boss offers early retirement packages. Before, that word layoff would have triggered pure panic. Now you're calculating whether the package is worth taking. A bear market hits, and everyone around you is selling in fear. Before, you would have joined them. Now you're quietly buying while the prices are low. This is what people mean when they say money makes money. It's not some cosmic conspiracy. It's that having a real financial foundation gives you options, and options are how wealth actually accelerates. Here's something else that changes around the $50,000 mark that will make you rethink everything you thought you knew about budgeting. You stop obsessing over small expenses and start focusing on the big ones. Now, I'm not saying you should go blow money on daily lattes. Hear me out. When you're broke, every tiny decision feels enormous. Generic cereal or name brand, regular or premium gas, sit-down dinner or drive-through. These micro decisions eat up mental energy because every dollar feels like it matters equally. But once you have a real financial foundation, you start seeing the actual math clearly. The difference between making coffee at home versus buying it every day is maybe $900 a year at most. That's real money. But it's not what's going to make or break your financial future. What actually matters are the big structural decisions: where you live, what you drive, how much you invest, whether you negotiate your salary or just accept the first offer. These decisions can swing your net worth by tens of thousands of dollars, not hundreds, tens of thousands. And when your brain is no longer consumed by survival mode, you finally have the bandwidth to think strategically about the decisions that actually move the needle. Now, let's talk about what $50,000 does to your career, because this is where things get really interesting. When you're living paycheck to paycheck, you're trapped. Your boss knows it. The system knows it. You know it. You can't push back on unreasonable demands because you need that direct deposit. You can't interview for better opportunities because what if they find out? You can't walk away from a toxic environment because walking away feels like financial suicide. And I get it. That fear is real. That trap is real. But $50,000 changes the entire dynamic. Suddenly you have what I call walking away money. You could leave tomorrow, survive comfortably for a year or more, and find something better on your own terms. You're no longer negotiating from desperation. You're negotiating from strength. Here's the wild part. You often don't even need to use it. Just knowing it's there changes how you show up at work. You become more direct, more confident, more willing to advocate for yourself. And guess what happens when you show up differently? People respond differently. Better projects find you. Recognition finds you. Pay raises find you. It's a feedback loop. Confidence builds wealth. Wealth builds confidence. And the whole thing accelerates. Now here's where most people completely blow it, and I see this constantly. They grind for 3 or 4 years to hit $50,000, feel that psychological shift, and then immediately spend it. Maybe they decide they deserve a new car. Maybe they take an all-inclusive trip to Mexico. Maybe they use it as a down payment on a house they genuinely can't afford. Don't do this. That $50,000 is not a reward. It's not a trophy. It's the engine of everything that comes next. The moment you spend it, you're not just losing $50,000. You're losing every dollar that $50,000 would have compounded into over the next 20 years. At 8% annual growth, $50,000 becomes over $233,000 in 20 years without you adding a single extra dollar. Let that land. And here's a cultural roast that might sting a little. We've been conditioned to think that driving a new car signals success. That the nicer the vehicle, the better you're doing financially. We've rebranded consuming depreciating assets as treating yourself. The moment you drive a new car off the lot, it drops somewhere between 15 and 20% in value. You didn't buy an asset. You bought an expense that looks like an asset. Meanwhile, that $40,000 you financed could have become $186,000 in your investment account over 20 years. The person driving the 2018 Toyota Camry with no car payment isn't behind. They're building. The person in the brand new leased luxury SUV isn't winning. They're renting the feeling of winning while the bank collects the actual wealth. Think about it this way. A $700 monthly car payment over 40 years with the investment alternative costs you close to $2 million in lost compound growth, not $700 a month. $2 million. That's not a coffee problem. That's a car problem. Once you have $50,000 working for you, your entire lens on major purchases shifts. You stop asking, can I afford the monthly payment? And you start asking, what is this decision costing me an opportunity? That $60,000 truck isn't just $60,000. It's what $60,000 becomes in 15 years, if left alone to compound. Suddenly a reliable used car doesn't feel like settling, it feels like strategy. And here's the beautiful irony that nobody talks about. The person quietly driving the used Civic, they're usually sleeping better, stressing less, and building more than the person who upgraded to the Range Rover the moment they got a raise. This mindset shift doesn't just apply to cars, it applies to housing, to vacations, to subscriptions you forgot you had, to that boat you bought twice, once when you bought it and once when you tried to sell it. I'm not saying become a person who never enjoys anything. I'm saying become a person who's intentional about where money goes. Because here's what happens when you operate from that place. You realize you don't actually want half the things you thought you wanted. That bigger apartment? The extra space is nice, but is it worth delaying your financial independence by 4 years? That expensive hobby? Fun, but there's probably a version of it that doesn't cost $600 a month. When you have $50,000 compounding in the background and a clear picture of where you're headed, it gets much easier to tell the difference between what you want in the moment and what you actually want for your life. Look, $50,000 is not going to make you rich overnight. It's not a finish line, it's a launch pad. It's the point where the math starts working for you instead of against you. It's the point where your brain stops operating in survival mode and starts thinking like someone who actually builds wealth. Every dollar you save and invest before that milestone is a dollar fighting gravity. Every dollar after it is a dollar with momentum behind it. Start building that foundation today. Not next year, not when the timing feels right. Today. Because your future self isn't going to care about the car you drove or the vacation you took. They're going to care about the decisions you made right now, when it was hard, when it was inconvenient, when nobody was watching. Trust me, that version of you is counting on this one.